there's a cutoff time. There's a date that judge says, on this day, the state of Ohio says, and the people say, you're going to be executed for your crime. Lost person, that is where you're at right now. That's where you're at. Romans chapter 5 and verse 12 says, wherefore, as by one man sin entered into the world, and death by sin. And so death passed upon all men, for that all have sinned. That's what the Bible says right there. You have what? You have the sentence of death. If you've not received Christ, be for sure you have that sentence of death. You have that coming. It's not something that might happen to you. It's not something that you're not sure about. Know for sure that the Bible says that you have inherited Adam's sinful nature passed down to you, and you have chosen to sin. You've chosen to sin against a holy and righteous God, and know for sure death passed upon all men, for that all have sinned. And that includes you in that thing right there. You have a time. Over in Ecclesiastes, one of the probably the most famous chapter in the book of Ecclesiastes, look at chapter 3 in Ecclesiastes, and we're just going to read the first verse and the first part of the second verse. To everything there is a season. You know, that's the way God looks at it. To us, we don't know what's coming. We don't know what's going, so to speak. But God knows to everything something's going to happen. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born and a time to what? A time to die. There is a time. You don't know when your time is. I don't know when my time is, but you know what God said? There is a time. There is a time. If you're rejecting Jesus Christ, there's a date, and you're not getting farther and farther away from that date. You're getting closer and closer to that date. That date may be a year from now. It may be 20 years from now. It may be 5 minutes from now. So, lost person, you need to take that thing serious and trust Jesus Christ before you cross that line. Because there's a time to die. The Bible says there is a time to die. Look over in John in chapter 7. John chapter 7. In John chapter 7 and verses 5 and 6, Jesus talks about how people have a time. They have a cutoff date. Okay? He's talking to his brethren. In John chapter 7, verse 5 and verse 6, it says, for neither did his brethren believe in him. Then Jesus said unto them, my time is not yet come. He was one who knew when his time was going to come, and it was going to come at the cross. But he didn't stop his saying there. It says, my time is not yet come, but your time is always ready. You have a time. And lost person, you say, what's that mean? Your time is always ready. It means you could die at any moment. You could die at any moment. If you're saved in here, we could die at any moment. Those lost people that we care about, that we have not been witnessing to, could die at any moment. How many Christians have cried at night? How many Christians have bawled their eyes out and said, why didn't I witness to that person? Because we thought that they had more time. We thought maybe we'd just get around to it next year, or we'd get around to it after we got through our financial troubles, or whatever it was that we had to do. And then that person that we loved and that person that we cared about died and went and spent eternity in hell away from God. How many Christians have had that guilt riding upon their heart? We need to be mindful of that, because those lost people, their time is always ready. And if you're lost, your time is always ready. It's ready anytime. There's no guarantee you got till tomorrow. No guarantee you got till tonight's church service. None whatsoever. None whatsoever. James chapter 4, verse 14. Just going to read part of that verse. You know not what shall be on the morrow, for what is your life? And you guys can read the rest of that verse. Compares your life to a vapor that disappears like a wisp of smoke. You know not what shall be on the morrow. How many of you guys could say, I know what's going to happen tomorrow? You know, I bet every one of us could raise our hand and say what we think's going to happen tomorrow, what might happen tomorrow, but not a one of us can say for sure what's going to happen tomorrow. You might not wake up. You might not ever see the sun come up tomorrow. And lost person, if that's your case, then you're hopeless. An eternity of torment. I think of a lady I worked with. She died in September. She was probably in her mid-late 40s, healthy, apparently, and saw her Friday. She worked in a different building, but she was there picking up some papers. Saw her Friday. She was always real nice, talked to people as she would go through the halls and stuff like that. Come back Monday, she's dead. What happened? Her time was all way ready. I don't know if she was saved or lost. I hope she was saved. I didn't know her real personal. You know, I knew her, talked to her, said a few words to her. But her time was already ready. Something went wrong, some bleeding in the brain or something like that. She didn't know about it. She goes in the hospital Saturday, dies early Monday morning. That quick. That quick. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You just don't know. I mean, I could say it 500 times. It's something you don't want to fool around with. I think about when I would get out from under the preaching before I got saved, what a foolish thing I was doing. Those times I'd be under conviction and just try to beam my way out that door to get in the car, wait for my parents. You know, I'd hang on to that pew. You know, I am so thankful that God allowed me to have this opportunity to get saved. He spared me until April 14th of 1988. But you know what? You know, it could have been a different story. I could have come out of church after being under conviction, knowing I needed to get saved. We had concrete steps that went down so far. I could have slipped, cracked my head. I could have been gone then and there. And though I knew the gospel, and I had a pastor back then who preached to me, and I had parents who loved me, and a mom who would pray for me, I can find her old Bibles now and find prayers she wrote out back when I was just a little kid for me and my brother and stuff like that. I could have had all those nice things. But had I died before April 14th of 1988, I wouldn't have had a second chance to come back and get things right and get saved. Wouldn't have had that chance. Because there's a time, there's a cutoff date, and each one of us have one of those. Cutoff date. You know, I was thinking of bills. We got lots of those, don't we? Bills. You know, you think of the term grace period. You know, after the due date, you might have a couple of days of a grace period where you can get that thing and pay your bill and not have to owe anything extra. You know, after death, there's no grace period. Right. You're lost and you die. God's not saying, well, I'm going to give you 3 more days to get saved if you want to get saved. There is none. The Bible says, as is appointed unto men once to die, but after this, the grace period. It doesn't say it, does it? But after this, the what? The judgment. The judgment. While you're living, that's when you got to do, lost person, that's when you got to get saved. So, is there a cutoff date? Yes, there's a cutoff date. Let's look at one more verse here in Ecclesiastes chapter 8. You know,